Potentially, stakeholders may feel they have a claim or maybe a demand on a particular organisation. So, for example, shareholders own the organisation and therefore would probably feel they have a right to tell the directors when they think things are going wrong. And it's difficult to argue against that. It's their company. But if we go down that list of stakeholders a little bit further, how about a supermarket which is getting very early morning deliveries in order to stack its shelves? Maybe lorries are turning up at 5 o'clock in the morning and unloading so that the supermarket is ready for business when it opens. What if you live nearby that supermarket? If you live near a supermarket that is getting these early morning deliveries, there is a strong chance that the noise is going to disrupt your sleep and guarantee that you have to get up early in the morning. Do you have a legitimate claim, a valid claim, such that you can go to that supermarket and request that they have their deliveries at a later time, or at least try to keep the noise down? I mean, you are being affected by the supermarket's actions, but on the other hand, maybe you should install thicker windows so you can't hear the noise. Or if you don't like it, you could move to another house in another area. Does the supermarket need to listen when you complain? Should the supermarket do anything about it? Now, some claims, as with the one we've just seen, are direct. In this example, the stakeholder, the person who lives near the supermarket, goes to complain themselves. So it's a direct claim on the organisation. But in some cases, those who are affected by the organisation either choose not to or maybe cannot make the claim themselves. So, for example, if the operations of an organisation affect a local school, it's unlikely that the children, being small and young and maybe not understanding the situation, it's unlikely they would go to the organisation and complain. Instead, maybe their parents do, or the teachers at the school, or maybe the parents complain on behalf of their children to the school, who complain on behalf of the parents and children to the local council, and maybe it's the local council who go to the organisation to point out the problem. With some stakeholders, they cannot make a direct claim. Imagine, for example, the planet. If you're causing environmental damage, it would be difficult for a tree to turn up at your office and make a complaint. You could argue, I suppose, that by dying, the tree is making a claim, but if no one sees it die, is it likely to be very effective action? There are some stakeholders who need representatives to make their claims for them. Children need their parents. The environment needs environmental supporters or protesters to protest on its behalf. The concept of an indirect stakeholder does cause one or two potential problems. I mean, if environmental protesters are complaining about global warming and saying it's bad for the planet, well, you could argue, you're protesters, you are not the planet. How do you know that the planet is upset about this? Maybe the planet wants to be a bit warmer. So there is a danger that with indirect stakeholders, the claims being made might be seen as less valid or less legitimate than if the claim comes from the person themselves. If I'm sitting in my office at a supermarket and a local resident comes in, points out the window and says, I live over there and your early morning deliveries are waking me up, it's a very easy claim to assess. I'm talking to the actual person, I can see what they're talking about. If someone from the local council comes in and says some local residents have complained about the noise of early deliveries, well, how do I know that's true? How do I know they have complained? And how many have complained? And how angry are they? So potentially, the claims of direct stakeholders might be seen as more valid, more legitimate, and therefore demanding action, than the claims of indirect stakeholders. Now, that is just one way of breaking up types of stakeholder, direct and indirect, and we're about to see a lot more. One way of breaking up different types of stakeholder is to use something called a Mendelow map. In the Mendelow map, the two main variables when assessing stakeholders are how much power have they got, how much influence, and how interested are they in the activities of the organisation. If you have very powerful stakeholders, that would suggest they could choose to do a lot to the organisation. If they are also very interested in the organisation, the chances are they will do a lot to the organisation. As such, any stakeholder who is very powerful and very interested cannot be ignored. You have got to take them seriously, deal with them, listen to them, manage them. So, for example, maybe the government decides that the hotel industry has had a bad reputation and starts doing investigations of hotel kitchens to make sure health and safety is good. The government could, under health and safety law, close a hotel down, so it's very powerful. And because it's now started an investigation, it's clearly also very interested. If you're a hotel, you can't tell the government to go away or just ignore this. This needs to be dealt with. At the other end of the scale, if you have a stakeholder who is not very powerful and frankly doesn't seem to be that interested in you, well, why would you do anything? There seems to be no particular point or benefit in dealing with this person at all. Now, those two boxes seem fairly easy to fill in. The other two, a little bit different. And there is a difference, a slight difference, between how you might address these two boxes. What if you have someone who is very powerful but does not seem interested? Let's imagine for a moment that just behind me there is a very large, ferocious dog. It's clearly very powerful, but it's asleep. At the moment, it's not interested in me. If it gets interested in me, I may have a very big problem. How should I treat the big, sleeping, horrible dog sleeping behind me? Well, the most obvious solution seems to be keep quiet, don't disturb it, don't upset it. At the moment, it seems to be happy. If you make it unhappy, it could do things to me. Solution, keep it satisfied. There's no need to do anything in particular, just don't upset it. Now, clearly my example is not the sort of example you might see on the exam. In the exam, a lot of government authorities are powerful, but generally would rather just leave your company alone. The general rule is, upset the government department, expect to be investigated and possibly penalised and punished. Basic rule, don't upset them, you'll never hear from them. But what about a stakeholder who doesn't have much power but is very interested? They can't do anything to you, but they're demanding a lot of information from you. They want to be kept informed. Well, the danger with all stakeholders is that potentially they move into that top left box up here, where you have to deal with them. So if someone is interested, but at the moment not that powerful, probably all you need to do is keep them informed. They've got what they need, which is their interest level being satisfied, and it should all work fine.